You can't just say shit and then get away with saying it.
Yeah.
I'm going to debunk you, and then you're going to respond to it. Now, if you can't handle the fact that I was able to prove you wrong, and that's why you're trying to move on, well, then just be honest about it. Either concede or fucking respond.
Well, that's one way to treat someone who disagrees with you in a debate. For those of you who don't know, this is Dean Withers, who is a part of that Zoomer politics group with that kid Parker who is in all the Jubilee episodes, and Harry Sisson, who said, "I'm a straight 22-year-old. I can assure you that no one believes that."
Any man who must say, "I am the king," is no true king.
Anyway, Dean is 20 years old, and him and his little friend group are popular on TikTok, but today we're going to talk about his YouTube channel because that's a lot easier to deal with in an editing program. Dean is a debate bro, which is an entire meta and type of content creator that's annoyed me a lot over the past 10 years, because most of these people seem to be creators who are a lot more concerned with farming a viral clip where they got an epic own for their audience, rather than to actually try to understand the viewpoint of the person who disagrees with them. Dean is a perfect example of this type of influencer, as it is immediately obvious when you watch him that he will do anything to make his opponent look like a complete piece of shit. Evidence of that is in a video called "These MAGA Fanatics Are Out of Control."
What's up, Crisco? Do you support Trump?
Yeah, I supported his ability to remove man from women's sports. I'm a girl dad, and so my daughters both compete on a high level, and I would never want them to have to compete against a male because we are naturally stronger.
I don't know how like the right has successfully convinced you to like place 12 trans women over the 66 million American women and girls that have lost their human rights / access to abortion, or the fact that more women have accused Donald Trump of raping them than there is trans women competing in the NCAA. I just think that there's much larger concerns here.
What does that have to do with what the caller was talking about? Like, where the hell did abortion come from? The caller said his biggest reason for why he voted for Trump is because Trump is against trans women in sports, and Dean immediately shifts to whatever he wants to talk about to make the caller look stupid. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that Dean didn't even wait 10 seconds to do this. Like, this is literally the first thing that happens in the video. It's like the guy says, "Yeah, I love cooking and I think I have a great pancake recipe." And Dean responds, "Did you know that Hitler liked pancakes?" So I guess we're going to talk about whatever Dean wants to talk about now.
So you just really care about what you deem as women's rights, correct?
You just care about my daughters. That's it.
And you would really
You know
care
what I
about
mean?
like keeping like a man out of like your underage daughter's like dressing room, for instance?
I don't see a reason why he would be in there with my daughter.
Okay. Like imagine that there's a shitty man, right? Not a trans woman, a cis man that walked into the changing room of your daughter. She's 17. She's an underage girl. She's naked, undressed.
I'm not really sure why he got onto the topic of locker rooms here, much less the idea of a normal heterosexual male entering a woman's locker room. It kind of seems like he's being aggressive here because he very specifically doesn't want the caller to mention stuff like Loudoun County before he can frame the transgender locker room issue in the way that he wants. And certainly Dean would want to make sure that he took control over the conversation before the caller brings up that Riley Gaines interview, where she talks about how a biological male was not only allowed to unfairly compete against her, but was also allowed to use the women's changing room.
I turn around, there's a 6'4", 22-year-old male dropping his clothes and is fully intact with an exposing male genitalia. So let me be clear. We were not forewarned we would be sharing this changing space. No one told us.
Believe it or not, it gets worse. After this happened, Riley talked to one of the officials about the new locker room rules and about how a biological male was allowed to watch the women change.
I went up to him and I said, I understand the guidelines for the meet, which was, at the time, it was only 12 months of hormone suppression. I said, I know that, but what are the guidelines for the locker room? And word for word, this is what he says. "Oh, we actually got around this by making the locker rooms unisex." So I'm like, okay, unisex. Okay, so this means that any man could have walked into our locker room? Any man, not just a self-identifying woman?
A fan seeking opportunity?
And no one told us?
This whole event also included the women who went to the school of the male swimmer being told their lives would be ruined if they spoke out against him, and they had to go to re-education courses so they could think more inclusively. This was quite an infuriating interview to watch. But anyway, let's see where Dean is going with the locker room situation. Why would he bring that up? It seems like a great way to lose a debate.
Like imagine that there's a shitty man that walked into the changing room of your daughter. She's 17. She's an underage girl. She's naked, undressed. What do you think should happen to that man?
If he walks in Walking in for what exactly? Did he walk in on accident?
To perv on them while they were naked, and he did so
He
intentionally.
gets the same treatment as anyone else.
What should happen to him?
If he tried something, he should be locked up.
He should be locked up. If an older man did this, boasted about it, said he got away with it, never got jailed, then ran for president, would you ever vote or support that man?
Absolutely not.
Don't be a hypocrite,
He should
bro.
be jailed.
Don't.
It doesn't matter who it is, bro.
Even if it was Trump,
prove your point.
even if it was Trump,
Okay, that's where he's going with this. He's trying to escape the very valid concern from parents of allowing boys into girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. And it's not just at school, but also places like Disneyland. So he's escaping this by shifting the conversation to a story about Trump, which is a tactic straight out of a book called Rules for Radicals, a book that Dean has almost certainly read. It's the handbook for people like him. And to put it simply, it's a book that teaches bad faith influencing tactics and dark triad behavior for the sole purpose of winning. Towards the end, there's a chapter on tactics where the author describes different rules to follow to be effective in convincing people of radical political change. Rule number 2, never go outside the experiences of your people. This one's not that bad because it's actually a rule that applies generally. You should always try to speak to the experiences that people you're talking to can relate to. This is just a basic communication skill, but it's all set up for the next tactic, which is Rule 3, that says that you should, wherever possible, go outside of the experience of the enemy. This rule is great because any one person can't know everything, so as a dishonest person, you can just bring up some random Snapple fact to your opponent, and if they don't know it, the audience will perceive them as stupid. You might even convince your opponent that they're stupid for not knowing the random thing that you brought up. It's quite an effective tactic in a live debate, especially against people who are unaware of it. So that's the reason that Dean has brought this story up about Trump in a locker room instead of sticking to the topic about trans women in sports. Now, in the next part, Dean is going to play a clip of Trump talking about locker rooms, but the way he does it is really confusing and abrupt. For context, he plays a 2005 clip of Donald Trump talking to Howard Stern about beauty pageants, and to make it less confusing, I'm going to use a different cut of this moment, but I will play the exact words that Dean plays, and then cut back to him talking and abusing the caller.
Oh, I see.
You tend to think about the conflict a little bit later on.
The question is, how can it not be construed?
No, I mean, some of these foreign girls, Mr. Trump, in my country, we say hello with vagina. And
Well, you could also say, as the owner of the pageant, it's your obligation to do that.
So you have done that. Now,
I'll tell you the funniest is that I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it. I'm inspecting. I want to make sure that
You're like
everything
a doctor.
is good.
You're there.
Yeah, the dress. Is everyone okay? They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible-looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
So the non-hypocritical, rational response would be at this point to say that you're no longer a Trump supporter, because immediately before I rolled that tape, you said that you would never support anybody that did this. You'd never vote for them to be the president, even if it was Trump. I'm putting my money on you just being a hypocrite. And are you no longer MAGA?
All right, so probably the most frustrating part of listening to Dean is that you have to fact check literally everything he says because he's always leaving out important context or just straight up lying. Though before we get into that, I will note that Dean caters to a younger demographic, so they likely don't understand the environment of the Howard Stern show because he is before their time. The show is supposed to be offensive, so Trump may be playing it up for the listeners. In fact, there is still an episode of The Stern Show with Trump on YouTube, and you can see Howard pushing Trump to be edgy. Stern does that every show. The whole point is to have dirty humor, so stories or storytelling may be embellished. That being said, there is so much context missing here. Dean says that Trump was creeping on minors, but there's no indication of that from this clip. Trump owned a pageant for adults and a pageant for teens, and I'm guessing that Trump is talking about the pageant for adults because no one outside of maybe Andrew Tate would be stupid enough to voluntarily admit to having an inappropriate relationship with a minor while being interviewed. Dean is also assuming that Trump didn't have consent from the adult women to enter the locker room. I think everyone here can picture in their head a situation where a bunch of young adult women would be perfectly fine with a billionaire being in their presence, dressed or not. But let's take a closer look. Trump owned Miss Universe, Miss USA, and Miss Teen USA. This allegation from Dean happened at a Miss Teen USA event in 1997, so basically 30 years ago, and the articles I found on it were 20 years after the event, so I'm sure everyone's memory is crystal clear. To sum it all up, these are just stories from people who were there, and nobody has any concrete evidence that Trump did anything illegal. This article here says that the girls' chaperones for the pageant told them to get dressed before Trump entered, and states that the chaperones would have never allowed anything inappropriate to have happened. Even in this BuzzFeed article that's far more against Trump, None of the witness testimonies said they were actually undressed around him. They merely said they were rushed to get dressed when they were told he was visiting. So this is not Trump creeping on 17-year-olds like Dean said. I mean, you could argue that maybe there's a more appropriate place for Trump to meet the contestants, but considering that this is a beauty pageant, I can imagine that a significant amount of the time that the girls aren't on stage is spent in the dressing room perfecting their outfit or their makeup. I don't know that much about pageants, but I can imagine that this area, a lot of the time, might be the most convenient place for a busy person to quickly meet everybody, and provided that they were all dressed, other adults were there, and proper boundaries were maintained, I don't see this as a problem. As for the adult pageants, we have a testimony from former Miss Arizona, Tasha Dixon. Let's hear what she has to say.
Our first introduction to him was when we were at the dress rehearsal and half naked changing into our bikinis.
Dixon was 18 at the time and says watching Trump storm into a dressing room was shocking.
To have the owner come waltzing in when we're naked or half naked in a very physically vulnerable position, and then to have the pressure of the people that work for him telling us to go fawn all over him, go walk up to him, talk to him, get his attention. Who do you complain to? He owns the pageant.
Notice how they said 18. So at the very least, that's another strike against Dean for the pedo allegations. I mean, based on Dean's extreme lack of evidence here, that allegation kind of sounds like defamation.
They all got sued by Trump, and Trump won all those lawsuits. CBS slandered Trump. They called him a rapist, and he sued them for defamation, and he won.
As for what Tasha said, it sounds inappropriate for Trump to enter a locker room while women are changing. However, Trump has denied these allegations, so now it's he said, she said, and considering that this happened 15 years prior to that interview, and there seems to be no proof outside of taking someone's word for it, and no other witnesses made their names public to corroborate Tasha's story, I'm going to say that Trump is innocent until proven guilty. False allegations happen a lot with rich people and public figures, and the reason we have legal standards is to prevent abusers from witch hunting everyone they don't like. Tasha claims that her allegations weren't politically motivated, but I find that very hard to believe because she appears to have made them a month before the 2016 election, so I don't think she's being honest about that. Now, to go on a slight tangent because it's relevant, I know that Trump is taking shit right now from MAGA because he went on Truth Social and said the Epstein files were fake, which no one believes. I know everyone's mad about that, and I'm not happy about it either, and like everyone else, I hope they do get released. Though more importantly, this video is not really about Trump, it's about Dean, and Dean just so happens to be talking about Trump here because he talks about Trump in like every video. I mean, this guy uses MAGA in his titles more than people used to use the word woke before Fox News anchors made that term cringe.
I think woke is dead.
So understand that anything I say here is not an endorsement of Republicans not keeping their promise to release the list. It's to talk about Dean's constant use of bad faith tactics, and since Trump is basically the only thing that Dean seems to talk about, we're going to talk about Trump. Anyway, as the debate goes on, instead of actually engaging with the ideas of his opposition about trans women in sports, Dean continues to use this video to do anything he can to attack Trump in any way.
Is there anything that Trump could do, any red line, that would make you regret your vote? I want an answer to my question.
I'm trying to tell you.
Yes or no? Is there anything that Donald Trump could do that would make you regret your vote? What if he committed a genocide on the other side of the world? He bombed and killed 1 million people. Would you still support him?
They should retaliate.
But would you regret your vote if tomorrow he dropped a bomb and killed 1 million people in Asia?
Yeah, but Trump hasn't done that, and also, this is completely irrelevant to the initial question. But I mean, if we're going to propose that as a hypothetical, then I don't think that's a path you want to go down as an Obama supporter.
Obama says that he wants to run for president in 2028. Will you be voting for him?
Okay, well, Obama hasn't said that. He literally can't. It'd be unconstitutional, but obviously I would, yeah.
I'm guessing Dean didn't know this because he got into politics like 5 minutes ago, but Obama was infamous for promising to end the Iraq war that Bush started, followed by taking his sweet-ass time to do that. I hate President Bush too, by the way. So Obama continued that war and ordered tons of drone strikes that had a really bad habit of killing civilians. And then he goes and jokes about it in a speech.
The Jonas brothers are here. Sasha and Malia are huge fans, but boys don't get any ideas. I have 2 words for you. Predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
I love how these people are like, you must disavow your candidate or you're an evil hypocrite, followed by not really addressing stuff their favorite person does or even just full on sweeping under the rug. They're politicians, guys. They all do bad stuff. I think the only criticism that I heard Dean give Obama is that he wasn't far enough on the left. Meanwhile, if Trump finds a quarter on the street and doesn't instantly donate it to charity, well then he's basically the devil. The debate continues with the caller talking about how he only wants a politician who addresses his personal concerns.
I don't care about y'all, you, or anybody else. I care about my circle, and my household. If he does something to somebody else,
I have a question.
Need to go handle him.
I have a question.
I will handle him.
I have a question. If Donald Trump re-legalized slavery in America, and it didn't personally impact you or your family or anybody that you personally know, enslaved 5 million African Americans in this country.
That's a fucked up situation, and somebody need to pull together so we can turn it around.
Would you have regretted your vote?
My vote is about my kids.
So he could literally re-implement slavery, and you still would have stood behind your vote for him.
If it impacts my children,
it didn't impact your children.
That's what I'm saying. If it doesn't impact any in my family, then no.
I mean, that was a terrible way for the caller to frame that, but in general, people only vote for things that directly benefit them or their group, and they don't really care about anyone else. Even when they claim they are voting out of compassion for others, those tend to be the most selfish types of people. This also applies to Dean, as I can assure you that he does not care about Democrats who are trying to effectively reinstate slavery through illegal aliens, because it personally benefits his career to promote the idea of breaking U.S. law to cross the border. I think I've heard enough leftists basically make the "without the slaves, who will pick the cotton" argument in my lifetime to see that if it was 1860, you could easily convince at least most of Dean's target audience to be pro-slavery. But I guess the more valuable point here is that Dean is so bad at arguing and so avoidant of the trans issues talk that he has to create weird hypotheticals to smear his opponent to win an argument instead of talking about things that actually happened.
Would you regret your vote for Trump if Donald Trump systemically slaughtered every black person?
Because I already told you it's not about Trump. I just told you that. It could be anybody. I don't vote for him for anything else. That's it. According to what you played, the audio you played, it sounds like he's a horrible dude. But if you get Trump out of office right now, the next person to get in, no matter who it is.
So that guest was an actual psychopath to the fullest extent of what that word means. That was completely, just absolutely deranged. Can we all agree that people like that shouldn't be able to vote?
I like how Dean shut off the caller's mic right before he was about to say that politicians in general have done a lot of evil things, and if you take one out, his replacement is likely to be a piece of shit too, which is something that most people would agree with. That was very honest and fair of Dean to cut off the more reasonable part of his take and then call him a psycho. But Dean, I think you'll find that most voters share extremely similar sentiments to your caller and will ignore insane amounts of bad behavior if it's from their favorite candidate. I'm sure he knows that. He argues with people professionally, which is why he brought up completely retarded hypotheticals, so his opponent would look bad after falling for the trap. He's really just clip farming here. He spends the whole interview using false evidence as fact, does everything he can to take the caller out of context, makes up extreme and irrelevant hypotheticals, and says the caller is a psycho at the end. Well, as stated in Rules for Radicals, ridicule is a man's most potent weapon. Dean has to do that because he can't win on merit. And think of how embarrassing this is. As a professional, without using bad faith tactics, he can't even defeat an unprepared, low-information caller who admittedly is a single-issue voter. That is pathetic. But again, Dean, are you sure that violence is a route that you want to go down? Remind me which party is responsible for effectively all the political violence. Like how many people on the left have said to kill white people or Jews, or have said things that are disgustingly racist for the purpose of justifying those things.
Jewish is not an ethnicity. This constructed ethnicity. This demonic ethnicity.
Also note that this guy, Mike from PA, DMCA'd the Reddit archive of this to cover up what was said. And what about Destiny saying that Trump and his supporters should be killed? Well, I mean, a lot of the left is saying that these days. Taylor Lorenz made a whole compilation of it. In fact, speaking of Taylor, she and Hassan Piker did a talk where he openly encouraged terrorism.
874 Beam Drive, and I'm gonna kill you with my AR-15. Like that's the type of messages they were leaving in this dude's office, and he's resigning. Like he's literally, this is his last term. So I think that people are a lot more radical now. This is a time, is an unprecedented time. And you actually wrote about this, and it was a great video where you talked about, someone has to do it. See, when I say that, everyone knows exactly what I mean. That which is I think that shows that there's a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and untapped potential, untapped revolutionary potential, as a matter of fact.
Man, get your girl to look at you the way Taylor looks at Hassan. Imagine that power couple. Also, why the hell has this guy not been arrested? Are they just going to let him incite violence over and over again to a huge audience with no consequences? I will say this, though, because in the past, I used to be more kind towards people like Dean or people in the Hassan group chat, and certainly, I still will give them credit for making good arguments, and I will try to counter-argue in good faith. I do that for the audience, and not out of respect for a person like Dean. However, I also now realize that a lot of people out there are just evil or demonic, and only use their words, emotions, or kind sentiments to deceive people.
Demons use words to trick humans. You can't trust a thing they say. It's in their blood. They're descended from liars.
A very on-the-nose metaphor from anime. Not to say that I include everyone I criticize in this category. For example, I think Ludwig deserves harsh criticism, but I also think he can redeem himself. I've never thought that Ludwig is like Hassan, despite the fact that they are friends. Ludwig is more of a coward who makes stupid decisions than he is malevolent. But as for the others, I no longer believe they deserve the humanization and respect that I used to give them, as they will only see that as a weakness that they can use against you. These people are evil, and the only thing they deserve is to be severely punished for what they've done. And when I include Dean in this category, it's not just how he debates. What I mean is that, like, just a couple of years ago, he was trying to pull an Andrew Tate Hustlers University scam.
While you guys are at home sitting on your asses, I just took a private jet out to LA with $1 million. In this rental passenger seats in a Coach duffel bag. Couple grand in the lap. I'm about to go drop it at Louis Vuitton.
When I opened up the pre-order for my e-Bible, which goes over effectively every single way I've been able to live my dream life at 17 years old by making money online.
Yeah, people are really going to believe a 17-year-old is a multimillionaire real estate mogul or whatever, who has advice that's worth paying for. Look, he's even copying Andrew Tate's posing, and he tried to crypto scam people too. The crypto part is explained in this next clip that is the courtesy of this YouTube video by Remnant777 that very much does not have enough views on it.
The university will teach highly specific skills such as influencer management and advanced cryptocurrency trading.
By the way, for some reason, all this stuff is still online even though it's 3 years old. You can go to this Telegram here and fact check it yourself. However, when all this Andrew Tate scam artist stuff didn't work for him, Dean moved into politics because there's a ton of money in politics if you want to lie to people professionally. Just ask Nancy Pelosi. And a lot of Dean's videos seem to go like the one where he's arguing about locker rooms. He starts the conversation off semi-politely, goes completely off topic, and then tries to accuse the opponent of being the devil, which brings us to one of Dean's latest dramas. Now, the full context of this, I believe, is lost because Dean memory holed it after the backlash, but he and the caller appear to be talking about Trump's ownership of the Miss Teen USA pageants and his appearance in the locker room that I spoke about earlier. Now, just as a reminder, as far as I'm aware, no degenerate behavior occurred at the teen pageants, and since Dean has not provided any counter evidence in these clips, they're basically slander. Anyway.
You're going to tell me that the parents of the teenagers aren't there either? I mean, I wouldn't send my kid to a pageant by themselves.
Do you think that a parent can consent to a teenager being perved on by an old man?
That's the whole point of a beauty pageant is people looking at teenagers clammed up, dude. I don't know what else to tell you. I think they're weird in the first place. You're glorifying young women and children in the first place.
I agree. I think beauty pageants for minors should be outlawed, or at the very least, certain parts of them should be.
So you're a father of a young daughter. Do you think you have the right...
I'm not.
Is that a young son?
Yes.
Do you think that you have the right, as the father of that son, to consent to having older people take pictures of your son while your son is naked?
If I was dumb enough to send my kid in, it's no different than a baby commercial for diapers.
Can you answer my question? Do you think that you have the right to consent to 65-year-old men looking at your son while he's naked?
I wouldn't allow it.
Do you think that you have the right? Do you think that you have the right to allow it? Do you think if you did allow it, that you would be violating the consent of your child?
They have no choice in the matter whatsoever. It's my decision as the parent, and I wouldn't put my kid in that situation. That's why I think pageants are weird in the first place.
I'm not sure where Dean is going with this. For one, children don't have the right to legally consent to anything, which is why good parenting is important. Second, Dean is acting like a 65-year-old who is not the parent, has never changed a child's diaper before, or he's acting like parents don't give consent for a doctor to see a child without clothes on to perform an exam, or that naked baby pictures aren't a thing that people commonly consent to. It really depends on the context of the situation, and the context in this case is that Trump met a bunch of fully dressed teenagers in front of their parents, which is something that I can imagine that basically everyone's okay with. I really don't like how people like Dean are trying to make everything pedophilia. Oh my God, this guy's attracted to a fully grown adult. What a creep. Or how dare Chris Evans be in a relationship with a woman in her 20s? So after this moment that he farmed out of the collar, Dean decides to do a thumbnail pose of his extreme shock for like 30 seconds, and then he does this.
So here's what we're going to do. I think that you don't deserve to have any custodial rights over your child. So for those watching, their handle is goatman91096.
And why are you trying to dox people, dude? That's weird.
Because I want to find who you are so I could call CPS and have them take your child away from you.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure you would like to try to do that.
Yes, I would. So
they would never even do it. That's the best part.
Okay. What's
Because
your name?
I would take the part, and I have a witness sitting here who's heard me say I would never put my child in that situation.
Okay. So what's your name?
This is why I have no problems with comparing people like Dean to a demon from a popular fantasy series. This is literally evil. He's going to call the CPS on someone to win a debate. And you know he got this idea from the whole Ethan Klein drama where a bunch of Hassan viewers and groupies like Denims called the CPS on Ethan and laughed as they tried to have his kids taken away for basically the same reason, which, again, was to win an internet argument.
All these people, incidentally, who are promoting this type of insanity are, in fact, childless and will likely remain that way.
Yeah, it's not a shock that it's always childless losers who are doing this to people with kids. Only a complete piece of shit would try to alienate a child from their parents over internet drama. So naturally, Dean starts to educate people on how to dox someone, which is a crime, by the way. Doxing is a crime where he lives.
So you said that you think that parents have every right to exploit and traffic their children. So
No, that's not what I said.
So I'm not going to debate it with you. That is what you said. So I just putting this out there for anybody. Feel free to take his profile picture. Maybe you could go on to tiktok.com/his handle. You could save his profile picture, run it through some reverse image search. Maybe it will link back to a Facebook or something where you could find his name. Feel free to take that information and report it to CPS. I really hope that there's at least one person out of the 11,000 people watching right now that has the technical know-how, the ability and the skill to find that information, and the desire to then turn around and take it to the authorities.
This is not only dangerous for that guy as he could be swatted, but also teaching tons of viewers how to dox people is bad for the entire creator space because you're empowering crazies with information on how to harass people. This weaponizing the CPS and encouraging your viewers to dox people is something you should go to jail for, yet Dean received zero consequences for it. I don't think he even got in trouble with YouTube or TikTok despite it being against the rules. But of course, this is all for the sake of the kids.
And yeah, we look out for children here. I think that we can all agree here that we care about children's safety. And that was a father that said that he believes he has every right to exploit and traffic his child, and that the child has no say.
Yeah, he didn't say that. What happened was that you created one of your dumb hypotheticals to attack the caller because you're retarded and don't know how to have a conversation without being deceptive. The caller responded, "I would never do that because I think it's wrong," which was not the answer that you wanted, so you just went ahead and lied about what he said to get your audience to harass him with fraudulent CPS calls. Dean, you're literally a child predator. You said their parental rights should be taken away because you disagree with them on politics. Again, do you see why I called him evil? He's trying to alienate that kid from his mother and his father, or get them doxxed and swatted over an internet argument. That's predation on a kid. You're trying to cause harm to a child to get TikTok points, and quite honestly, I don't understand why none of these people face any legal consequences for openly committing crimes. Not to mention that social media platforms seem to enforce their rules on everyone else, except for people like this.
God, it's so cringe. He's acting so performatively right now. He's acting like he's the coolest anime protagonist. He's calm, collected anime protagonist.
Dean did a follow-up video to this event where he doubles down and sort of fake apologizes. There's not much point in showing it because almost all of it is a rehash of what I just showed you, followed by talking about how he is morally justified to do what he did, and at the very end, he gives a great Frogan-style non-apology where you say, "I could have handled it better," instead of saying I'm sorry.
It's not called doubling down if you're right.
So Dean is like a complete psycho with how he will Andrew Tate-style scam people, take people out of context, and falsely accuse his opponents. I don't claim to have watched all of his content, but in the content I have watched, the dark triad debate tactics are always present. For example, this next video called, MAGA Bro denies and deflects his way through our entire debate. What a title. I'm sure none of that is a projection. Anyway, this video is a heated discussion about illegal aliens and deportation.
I think that mass deportation is a terrible policy, and I usually categorize 3 reasons why. The first category would be the economy, the second category would be ethically, and the third category would be practically. It fails in the ethical category. I mean, that one's going to be obvious. We're ripping mothers and fathers that are hardworking away from their families.
Wow, that's a super interesting thing that you said there. You mean to say that you think it's wrong to separate children from their parents? Weird how in this context that matters to you. With that said, I'm just going to summarize Dean's main points here to save us some time. Dean believes that deporting illegals hurts the economy because it lowers the GDP, which, by the way, is not a great example of the economic health of the average citizen. He says that deportation is not ethical and it's not practical. His current stance is that only the criminals should be deported. And for everyone else, what he says next is how he would handle people illegally crossing the U.S. border.
And then it fails in the category of practicality because it is really hard to do, and there's other solutions that we could go about and use to identify everybody in this country, such as mass amnesty, that would be more practical.
Yeah, just don't enforce the law. That's his solution. Give everyone legal status, basically. Make it not a crime to cross the border, which I guess technically would be a more practical way to identify people because maybe they would voluntarily report themselves to be registered. I mean, they could also voluntarily leave the country. That's an option as well. But more importantly, Dean's mass amnesty plan doesn't disincentivize millions of people from illegally crossing the border. In fact, it would encourage more people to do it, so it's not a solution. Every country has finite resources. You can't just give them all away for free like we're doing with illegals. I also think this is completely tone deaf with how many legal immigrants hate the illegals. These days, I see videos of them getting dissed for not assimilating to American culture on a regular basis.
Hola. ¿Habla español?
Excuse me, does anyone speak Spanish? No.
¿Hay alguien que habla español aquí? ¿Me da la número 10?
I'm sorry, we're closed.
Damn right, don't help them. Also, allow me to remind everyone that this is a bipartisan issue. Both the left and the right don't like illegals. Don't let grifters like Dean fool you into thinking that this is a left versus right battle. It's not. Traditionally, the left has been very against illegal aliens, and most people don't want amnesty because it's bad for the country. Anyway, next the caller makes an excellent point in reference to Dean saying that he wants to deport the criminals.
I have been watching the news like for the past 4 years, and it's nothing but immigrants and sex offenders, and you don't know their criminal history.
I would have liked to have played more, but Dean cuts him off almost instantly as he's about to make a good point. The point was that Dean said that he is for deporting criminals, but no one else. So the caller counters with, if they're coming over illegally, how do you know who has a criminal history so you can deport them? I think Dean's answer might be the amnesty thing, but then they would just not apply for it, because if they do, they would get deported. So the only way to identify their criminal history under Dean's plan is to wait for them to get caught committing a crime. Do we not see a problem here? American citizens have to be subjected to possibly multiple crimes from a single illegal alien before he gets caught when he could have just been deported. And that's just for the ones who get caught. Well, sorry, I mean the ones who get caught and aren't still allowed to remain in the country like this guy was, who crashed his car and killed 2 people. So Dean, if an illegal kills someone or commits a sex crime, what do you say to the victim or their family knowing that you could have prevented that crime by enforcing border laws? Is Dean going to address this? No, he's going to immediately shift to accusations against Trump. Actually, immediately is the wrong word. It's worse than that. He doesn't even wait for the caller to stop talking before he cuts him off to change the narrative.
And if you actually look
this up... Do you think that we should get sex offenders out of the country?
Yes.
Then why'd you put a sex offender in the Oval Office? Donald Trump's been held civilly liable for the rape of a woman. Use your brain, bro. Connect the dots. And the funny part is like the people watching this stream are going to be like, damn, Dean just cooked him. Dean just clocked him. But no, I mean, like, it's just super common sense. You think that sex offenders shouldn't be in America, but you put one in the Oval Office. How the hell can you retrospect upon that view and not come to the conclusion that you're just an absolute raging hypocrite?
So we are again going to try to move the conversation to something the caller might be unaware of, so you can chastise him for 4 or 5 minutes about it to make everyone in your audience think he's stupid, so they ignore the fact that you never really addressed the question.
Let me ask you a question. What was that woman's name?
I don't know, but it was...
I mean, gee, I would love to know the name of the person that you're talking about so I can fact check you, but you never say it.
Okay, let me ask you a second question. What is one piece of evidence that the unanimous jury of 9 that ruled that Donald Trump was guilty of rape and are used to find him guilty?
I don't know that case.
You don't know any evidence that they used to find him guilty. Let me ask you a question. Well, where did he rape her?
Like I said, I don't know about the case.
You don't know?
No, I didn't
what
even know
year?
that Trump was a rapist.
What year?
You said that to me right now.
Oh, so you actually have no prior information about this woman, about the civil court case, about the jury that ruled he was guilty.
Yeah, that's exactly why you brought it up. You know he doesn't know about it, and because you probably already educated your audience on this topic, you can make him look stupid as a way of dismissing the very good point he was about to make about criminality. What Dean is doing is so messed up, and what's even more messed up is the case itself. But before we get into that, may I remind you that House Democrats are well known to use false allegations as a political weapon. So there's a strong chance that this was done against Trump for political reasons, like the false allegations of sexual assault against Brett Kavanaugh to try and prevent him from becoming the Supreme Court judge, and the riot they started for that same purpose. With that said, as for Trump, of course he was tried in civil court because the burden of proof is much lower in civil court. And he was accused of an assault by Jean Carroll that supposedly happened 20 years prior to the lawsuit. Already throw that case out, it's way too old. The reason the statute of limitations exists is because people's memory gets shitty over time. The way they got around that was just to straight up change the law in New York to expand the statute of limitations. Anyway, to speed things up, Trump lost the case, but here's the thing. They did not find him guilty of rape, nor is he legally a sex offender. So let me just point out, like I did earlier, that Trump sued and won against a CBS anchor for accusing him of what Dean accused him of. And personally, I think Carroll was lucky to get any victory on this case, considering that as far as I can find, really the only evidence she presented was her own story and a friend retelling her story. There wasn't a police report or a rape kit or a security camera or witnesses who were at the store who testified. So I have a really hard time believing a story from 20 years ago with essentially no evidence. Since we're on the subject of illegal border crossing, this is a person's story that Dean brought up a lot in videos that I watched.
Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. He was an immigrant that was sent to CICOT in El Salvador and beaten, tortured for 3 weeks. While he was there being beaten, tortured, the Supreme Court had unanimously ruled that the Trump administration's removal of him to El Salvador was illegal and they had to facilitate his return. And then after they ruled it as illegal and told them that they had to facilitate his return, Trump's White House went on Twitter and said that he's literally never coming back. And this was all while Abrego Armando Garcia was being beat and literally tortured by the guards in CICOT in El Salvador. I mean, he's like testified to been forced to kneel from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And if he fell out of exhaustion, he would have been beat by the guards. He testified that he was beat by the guards. Testified that the guards kind of like stuck him in a really small room with bright fluorescent lights on 24/7 with no windows.
As far as I'm aware, there's no actual proof of the torture claims, just Garcia's testimony and the reputation of the prison. Now, at face value, what I would say is that if this guy was wrongly deported, then you bring him back, apologize, give restitution, and then change protocol so that over time this kind of thing becomes less likely. Realistically, if you're deporting millions of people, then logistically you're going to have some hiccups. However, you know, when I first heard Dean tell this story before I fact-checked it, I thought this guy was a legal citizen and they just wrongfully threw him out of the country. That's not the case. It turns out that Abrego Garcia is not an immigrant like Dean said he was. He was an illegal alien. What actually happened was that Garcia crossed the border illegally and resided here for like 8 years before he went to an immigration court and got a hold on his deportation because he claimed his life was in danger. I can't exactly figure out why he was at the court, but he got arrested for loitering around a Home Depot, so that might be why. Really fighting those stereotypes. But just on those grounds, I think he should be deported because instead of applying for something like asylum right away, he avoided the government for a bunch of years and I believe only applied after he got caught.
I think every single illegal immigrant in the country should be removed. That's why we have laws. That's why we have borders. Kick them out of the country. That's right. Kick every illegal immigrant out of the country. There is zero troll when I say that every single person in America illegally should be removed. If you are illegal in the country, leave.
Not far enough. H-1B visas are the slave labor of the middle class because you can just fire them and essentially get them deported if they try to organize. These visas need to be cut way the hell down. Microsoft should not be firing American workers to get cheap labor from India.
There are many examples of this, such as Microsoft recently cutting thousands of American workers while requesting 14,000 more H-1B workers this year. Another example of this was Tesla, where roughly 15,000 American employees were fired in April 2024, and many were replaced with H-1B visa holders. On Twitter, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy tried to chalk this up to these immigrants just simply being the best and the brightest. Yeah, okay. You're paying them less for longer hours and more work, and they're willing to deal with it in order to stay in the country. It's coercive, exploitative, and, dare I say, not very America first.
Allow me to remind everyone that Shoe on Head is on the left and also a fan of that Bernie Sanders clip where he says that open borders are a scam. Immigration policy is not a right versus left issue. Most Americans do not want open borders. Anyway, back to Abrego Garcia. He was trying to skirt the system, and he should not have been rewarded for doing that. His ass should have been deported back in 2019. Wait, he actually did apply for asylum, but was denied because that's supposed to be done within a year of arriving to the country. Pace judge. Unfortunately, that was overturned. However, here's the interesting thing. There's a lot of evidence that Garcia is an MS-13 gang member, and after applying for asylum, the BBC says he got a withhold of removal status because he said that he was afraid of being persecuted by the rival gang of MS-13, so that is suspicious as fuck. Speaking of criminal behavior and accusations, I know that Dean is a believe all women type because I've watched him crash out over it, so these following allegations in Dean's eyes should be as good as true. That being said, Garcia has been accused of domestic violence multiple times by his wife, who I'm guessing he isn't legally married to, and the only reason they didn't stand is because she didn't show up to court, which might be because he threatened her or someone in the family emotionally bullied her knowing he could be deported. Garcia also is currently on trial for trafficking tons of illegals, and it sounds like he's guilty. Personally, I think it's very unlikely that you're this close in proximity to this much criminal behavior if you aren't a criminal. His trial is still ongoing, so I guess we'll see what happens, but I think this is exactly the type of person that Dean said should be deported, yet he's defending him.
For any and all undocumented immigrants that were deported under Obama without any prior violent offenses, I disagree with that too. My view on immigration is actually a little bit further left-leaning than the Democrat Party.
Whether he gets residency or not, may I point out that Dean brought up Kilmar Abrego Garcia in every debate video that I watched. Think about what that implies. It implies that deportation of people who have some legal right to be here happens so infrequently that this is the example that he has to use. So like I said, I think Dean purposefully brings up these very nuanced cases that are incredibly difficult to research to make people look stupid so he doesn't have to address any actual arguments. I mean, it took me hours to read through Abrego Garcia's case. And worse, he'll actually make fun of and bully people for trying to fact-check him live.
I'm trying to find something here, trying to look it up as we're going. Say the question so I can type it in.
Say the question so you could type it in? Type it into where? ChatGPT?
No, not ChatGPT and Safari so I can see what you're talking about.
Wait, you see what I'm talking about?
Again, no one person can know everything there is to know about politics, so the point is to purposefully bring up a random fact or a story to make your opponent look stupid, and its relevance to the conversation doesn't matter that much. It gets worse with Dean, though, because when a different caller actually does get him on something, he just changes the rules of the debate. In this call, they're talking about the border again, and Dean is busy saying that Trump violated the Constitution, so as a gotcha point, Dean asked the caller to name a Democrat who has committed a crime to create some sort of metaphor.
Dude, I could do this too. I want you to give me an example of anything illegal that any Democrat has ever done.
Anything illegal that any Democrat has done.
Yes, ever.
I mean, Bill Clinton with a 17-year-old Monica Lewinsky.
Monica Lewinsky wasn't 17.
Questionable.
Okay. 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 So she was 24 in 1997, but you're saying that she was under the age of 18 when she started going to the White House. Maybe this was like potential coercement. Okay, I'm not going to use that as an example to show my hypothetical. Would you give me another example? Okay, Andrew Cuomo, what about him? He was a governor, by the way.
Governor, yes. Not bad.
And what did he step down for?
For sexual harassment.
To be fair, I can't confirm if these specific Clinton grooming allegations are true or not, and sexual harassment is the least of Cuomo's crimes, but Dean just got wrecked. Is he going to disavow these people like he constantly asks people to disavow Trump? No, he's not. He's instead basically going to tell the caller that's not fair and change the terms of the question that he asked.
Can you give me an example of like something illegal that a Democrat has done that isn't like sexual? Like, because I'm just, okay, I'll explain to you the point that I wanted to make, but you're like only bringing up examples of like sexual harassment and pedophilia, and I don't want to like describe what I want, like my retort to your original argument as it relates to like sexual harassment or pedophilia. I just don't want to distort like an allegation of SA or P3
I mean, that's real strange of you to request that in this case, considering all the statements that you made about Trump. He was trying to create a metaphor out of this around confirmation bias, where he would hypothetically say that as a Democrat, any crime a politician commits doesn't count as long as he likes them. And the reason he didn't want to use the caller's examples is because he didn't want to distort the allegations of a sex crime. Bro, you literally have done that multiple times to your opponents, to the extent where you might be found guilty of defamation if you were sued. The hypocrisy here is ridiculous, and there's so much bias. In this next clip, they're talking about how the caller thinks that America should not grant birthright citizenship to the children of illegals, because that should only be granted to people with parents who are citizens. During this, Dean argues that deporting somebody with the current legal interpretation of birthright citizenship is a constitutional violation.
Okay, but now you're saying that you just legally, so you morally don't support giving citizenship to the children of undocumented immigrants. Well, I mean, that would call for like taking the proper legal channels in order to amend the Constitution. Okay, right? We obviously can't just say because Donald Trump doesn't like the Constitution and you agree with it that you don't like the Constitution either, that you could just throw the Constitution out of the fucking window.
Sure, it is unconstitutional. I mean, I could take the L on that and say that EO was unconstitutional.
Okay, all right, the EO is unconstitutional. And then earlier in the conversation, you said, well, if it was unconstitutional, why hasn't he been impeached for this? Basically telling me and everybody else listening that you think if a president does something unconstitutional, such as an EO banning birthright citizenship or banning guns, they should be impeached. So now that I've got you to concede that that was unconstitutional, you're now going to turn around and call for his impeachment, correct?
Sure.
Okay, so then you're no longer a Trump supporter because you think he should be thrown out of office.
I'm still a conservative.
I mean, this is just ridiculous. Remember how Dean talked about how much he likes Obama? Well, Obama constantly violated the Constitution. While I will say that I do believe that we should take the proper legal channels to amend birthright citizenship, what I really don't like is how people like Dean will say that you're violating the Constitution if you want to deport kids with their parents, but at the same time, if you want to follow the Constitution by saying only the parents have to leave, well, then you're separating families if a sociopathic parent refuses to take their kids with them when they get deported. So this is like intentionally designed to be an unwinnable argument through emotional bullying. The correct answer is to not play this game by saying that you don't care and by saying that they shouldn't have broken the rules and they can either fly a plane back to their country of origin with their kids or those kids can go into the foster system. Them being negligent parents is not our problem. They have the option to be with their kids if they want. 2, I think probably most people would agree that birthright citizenship should be abolished for children born to non-citizens or people without some legal status like a green card. We're all quite tired of illegals using anchor babies as human shields while saying, have some compassion to stay in the country. Trying to manipulate people by threatening to abandon your child if the U.S. deports you for breaking the law is very morally close to child trafficking.
They talk to us so that they may deceive us. Every word is a baited trap. They're monsters who found they could lure in humans by crying, "Help me."
If you're willing to throw your child away like that or use them as a means to an end, then I don't have any sympathy for you. But speaking of Obama, Dean, where were you on all those Fourth Amendment violations that Obama did through the Patriot Act? And since we're talking about taking the proper legal channels, did Obama do that when he started enacting all the gun control during his presidency? No, he didn't. But I guess that's okay because your friend Harry Sisson said that guns were scary.
So I shot a gun for the first time today, and I've always been told by Republicans that after the first time, I'll be in favor of guns and I'll want more guns. But for me, it was the exact opposite. I realized how powerful these guns are, and at a moment's notice, they can be used to take someone's life. And the fact that in many states in this country, you can walk into one of these stores and 10 minutes later walk out with an AR-15 is absurd. This experience made me want more gun control, not less.
Geez, is he the one who Dean called the F-slur? Oh, and here's one of my favorite Obama moments where he openly says that he was going to use executive orders to subvert the Constitution.
We are not just going to be waiting for legislation in order to make sure that we're providing Americans the kind of help that they need. I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward.
This is your hero, right, Dean? Also, he actually says this multiple times.
I'm going to be working with Congress where I can to accomplish this. But I'm also going to act on my own if Congress is deadlocked. I've got a pen to take executive actions where Congress won't. And I've got a telephone to rally folks around the country on this mission.
But I guess none of that matters to people like Dean because it's not about moral consistency or making good arguments or admitting to faults. It's about winning and making money. Well, it's a lot more about the money part.
This is every single time I see him actually doing a debate. He'll do like these weird gotchas. He'll be like, do you think that the Bible is moral? And he'll be like, yeah, I think the Bible is moral. Oh, the Bible allows slavery. You're pro-slavery? Guys, this guy's pro-slavery. It always becomes him trying to trick people into like admitting to like paradoxes and stuff. It's like someone will say, yeah, I believe in God. And then he'll be like, oh, really? Could God create a boulder that even he can't lift? And it's like, bro, this is like, what are we doing? Oh, you can't answer the question. Do you concede God is not real? And it's like, oh my fucking God, dude.
Dean does that because he's not smart enough to succeed without it, and the rules for radicals tactics that he's using are incredibly hard to defeat without the debate turning into a shouting match. So if you're Dean, then you either win or you draw, and a draw is always considered a win by a person's own fan base. I think the only person who has successfully defeated this in my memory is Jordan Peterson against Kathy Newman, and then a second time with that GQ lady. But like I said, the only reason they're doing this is because they can't succeed otherwise.
The reason why they do this is because they're not getting any attention for their actual content. And so instead of that, they piggyback on internet hate mobs online in order to create the illusion of relevancy. That's what's happened.
To be clear, Asmongold is talking about Anthony Fantano here, but this situation bears a close resemblance to Dean failing at his Andrew Tate grift and then moving on to woke TDS virtue signaling. It's not about the morals, it's about the money. And to be clear again, I'm not saying that as a content creator you can't make money, but if you're doing so immorally, then that's a problem. And you know people like Dean don't give a fuck about morals, because if they cared about that, then they wouldn't constantly lie and misrepresent everything, because that harms the audience and the country. They also wouldn't call the CPS over an internet fight. These people are criminals, and they need to actually get punished for doing bad things. There's been a severe lack of that happening in this country, and what that does is it allows retards to speak over the smarter and more honest people on their side. Smart videos like this one here by Sean that was pretty good, or this one by Man Carrying Thing. The idea is to create a culture where people are actively looking for creators who are trying to be honest in their interpretation or their analysis, instead of looking to people like Dean Withers or Andrew Tate who are just there to scam their audience for money. And the answer to that is to actually hold people accountable for their crimes, which is something that we're actually getting better at slowly recently. People are starting to learn that mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent, and that applies personally as much as it does politically. Politics is just the representation of the sum total of everyone's personal lives, meaning that the more you let people walk all over you and the more that you don't hold people accountable for doing bad things in your personal life, the more you'll enable that to be done politically. Because if everyone's just a pushover, then we won't have enough strong people to stop all the criminals. And for those asking what to do or how they can make things better, all you have to do is stop putting up with bullshit. That's all it takes. Anyway, thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video.